Hello, this is Rob Chadwick from ADL, and this is the 11th in a series of short tutorials on using the Virtual World Framework Sandbox application. In the previous tutorial, we looked at setting the scene properties, which is why my desert environment here has some fog and this nice sky background, and why the sun is kind of intense and the ambient light is low. Prior to that, we looked at the material editor, which is where we got this lovely desert texture, and prior to that, we built this shape using modifiers and primitives. In this scene, or in this tutorial, I'm going to talk about how to bring in some shapes. So you've seen how to create spheres and boxes, and you've seen how to texture them, and you can do some geometry modifications and what have you, but we don't know how to make anything more complex. Certainly, you could build a lot of things out of boxes and spheres and those modifiers, but there's some shapes that are just going to be too difficult to craft within this, and you're going to want to import them from an external art tool. We have a integration with an ADL product called the ADL 3D repository. And the ADL 3D repository is kind of like an asset store for three-dimensional modeling, simulation, and game assets. To get to that integration, you'll just hit the shopping cart icon up here. I'm going to start by just pulling in a piece of content and showing you the interface, and I'll talk a little bit about upload later. So when I pop this open, the first thing I get is just a search box, and I'm going to search for a tree. When I hit the search button, I'll get a wait dialog. What's happening right now is the system is going out to the 3D repository search endpoint and returning back with a list of search results. Those search results include some little thumbnails, and in this case I found the tree I want. It's called Dead Tree. When I click this, I'll get a dialog here and a create and a close button. Let me close this for now and see if I can just show you a multi-page search results. Let's try military. So this should give us enough search results so we have to page through them, and I just want to show you that GUI. Oh, no, that didn't give us quite enough. How about table? You can see there's all kinds of content in the ADL 3D repository. Here, well, page 0. Try furniture, if I spell it right. Now, not every one of these objects is going to import because there's permissions set on the objects within the 3D repository. I'm actually going to give up on finding a multi-page search result. I'm actually going to try the blank field that might return everything. Now, these objects have to be marked as publicly accessible within the 3D repository in order for you to pull them into this system. So, let me drop over to the 3D repository while this is searching. I'll show you the main website. It's 3dr.adlnet.gov. And this website will just allow you to upload and download content. And it's got a whole interface to search, and there's metadata and rating and all of that. To upload, you'll go to Upload. And you have to log in. You do need an account on this site, and those accounts are not aligned with the accounts on the Virtual World Framework, which means that's why everything has to be kind of marked publicly. From here you can upload and download models. I'm not going to go into all that. Let's drop back over here. So let's go back to tree and get the object I was searching for. There we go. I'm going to pull this one up, and in this case, instead of closing it, I'm going to hit create. You can see there's a little bit of information in here. The polygon count is particularly interesting. Also notice the anonymous download true. If this says false, you're not going to be able to import the object. When I hit create, it will appear right at the center of my view, just like everything else does, right where it intersects the ground. In this case, the model is kind of modeled sideways, so I'm going to have to turn it right side up with the shapes, with the editing tools, just like we talked about in this very first, maybe second lesson. And now I've got myself a tree. Now, just like you learned in lesson, 3, duplicating objects, copy and paste, I can just duplicate, and duplicate this object all over the place and build myself a nice little forest. Very nice. Look at that. Now they're floating up above the ground. Why don't I drop them in? Now I'm not going to talk about the upload process for the 3D repository. There are other videos on the internet about how to do that. In this case, I just wanted to show you how you could pull something in. Let's go ahead and grab something a little bit more interesting. I think we could find the Jeep. The Jeep is a good model because it's pretty complex and it's a much higher polygon model. You'll note that this is actually 28,000, almost 30,000 polygons. I'll hit create. The system will go to the 3D repository and grab the data, and then the Jeep pops right in. And of course I can just pull it and manipulate it just like any other object in the scene. You'll notice that the motion handle is right at the edge for this guy rather than in the center. That's because he's 3D modeled with his center value just offset. If you were interested in moving that point over, you would just parent this to another object. But there we have it. We've brought in a couple of different models from the 3D repository, and we can see how we can start building a complex scene with all kinds of art assets. One thing I should note is that each of these objects does obey the modifiers in the material editor, just like we would expect. In this case, here's texture layer 1. This is the texture that came out of the 3D repository, and I could change it to be some kind of crazy clear ground or whatever. So there you have it. So you can bring objects in. You can change their materials. There we are. See, I've turned it into sand, which looks kind of silly. Maybe I should do something more obvious, right? Like grass. There we go. Now it's green. And it will obey geometry modifiers just like everything else. Create, modifiers, twist. If I pull up the object properties, and we saw this in a previous lesson, you'll see that I can just twist the tree using the geometry modification. So that's pretty nifty.